Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our CMS virtual event series. Today, our session is titled, Is the Legal Profession for Me? My name's Ella, and I'm an Early Talent Acquisition Advisor here at CMS. I'm based up in the north of England and look after some of our programmes, including our work experience and scholarship programmes here. It's really great to see you all online today. I can see that we have some joiners from South Africa and even Hong Kong. So hello and welcome to today's webinar. Alongside the lovely Meet and Engage team who are driving the system in the background today, I'm also joined by Anita, who is another one of our wonderful early talent acquisition advisors here. She will be interacting with you on the chat this afternoon, answering all of your questions today, and also posing some questions for the Q&A that we will be holding later. We are really excited today to be joined by some representatives from the business here at CMS who are going to talk to you about the topic of whether the legal profession is for you. They are all really passionate about widening access to the legal services industry, and they are here to share their stories with you. Before we get going, I just wanted to ask you a little question. So coming up on your screen any second now will be a poll, and I just want to ask you this question to get a feel of what your currently thoughts are about entering the legal progression. So the question is, do you feel like your background is a barrier to the legal services? Number one, not at all, and number four, not sure. So if you could rank how you're feeling currently to that question in that poll, that would be great. Whilst you're thinking about how you feel on that one, I just want to remind you that for those who are joining us for their first session, Anita will be on the chat function today ready to answer your queries. We are also excited to be hosting the Q&A with our panelists who will be introduced shortly, so please do use the chat to ask those questions. We will collate them and ask as many of them as possible at the end of today's event. Please do ask whatever is on your mind with regards to this topic. Our panelists' backgrounds are all super unique and they are very happy to share their insights. And also do remember that if you're thinking it, the chances are that other people will be thinking it as well. So in terms of the results then, 70% of you said maybe. So do you feel your background is a barrier to entering the legal services? 70% of you said maybe. We're going to ask you a similar question at the end of today's session to see if what you've heard today will change your thoughts at all. So without further ado then, I am going to hand over to Sarah and Megan, who are going to facilitate the rest of this afternoon session.
Thanks very much, Ella, and good afternoon, everyone. So as Ella was saying, the aim of this session today is to try and tackle some common myths and misconceptions about legal services and the legal profession. A lot of these misconceptions are often more likely to be believed by people who come from a background where they might not have any experience with the legal profession or any contact with a lawyer before. So their main exposure to what law as a career is like, or what lawyers are like as people, might come from television and film, where the points are often really over-dramatised, or from things they've heard from others and public perception. And those other people might also have very limited exposure to the legal profession. So some examples of some common myths, which I'm sure you might all have heard, are that you need to come from a certain background in order to succeed in law, that the profession is really dated and old-fashioned, or that lawyers are maybe not the nicest of people and they only really care about winning. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Sarah, who's going to introduce you to our three wonderful panelists that we have with us today. And they are going to help us to dispel and bust some of these myths and misconceptions by sharing their own stories and lived experiences with you. So Sarah?
Thank you very much, Megan. Yes, we really do have a fantastic panel today, and I am really excited to introduce you to them. So without further ado, our first panelist is Nicola. Nicola, would you like to give everyone a little wave? Lovely. So Nicola is of counsel in our real estate team. She is from County Durham, went to estate school and was the first in her family to go to university. After being told that being a lawyer was unattainable because you needed 10 A's at GCSE, Nicola was championed by a careers advisor at her sixth form college. She was encouraged to apply to Cambridge University and was supported through the application process. Our Our second panellist is Emma. Emma, would you also like to give us a little wave? Thank you, Emma. Emma grew up in Greenock, a town in the west coast of Scotland. She is the first lawyer in her family, and she graduated with first-class honours in law from the University of Strathclyde in 2010, before going on to practice as a solicitor at CMS. Emma qualified as an advocate earlier this year, which is a similar role to a barrister in England and Wales, and Emma now practices with the Faculty of Advocates, appearing in courts all around Scotland on a daily basis. And then last, but certainly not least, our third panellist is Sophia. Sophia, would you like to give everyone a little wave? Thanks very much, Sophia. Sophia came to the UK from Ukraine when she was 12 years old without speaking one word of English. Sophia was on free school meals and came to the CMS Scholarships programme. After graduating from Durham University, Sophia completed a training contract with CMS and qualified into our real estate transactions team just a couple of months ago. So we certainly have a very exciting panel for this session today, and thank you very much to all of our panellists. We really do appreciate you sharing your stories and experiences with us today, and we are really excited to hear them. So Megan, would you like to kick off the Q&A?
Thank you, Sarah. Yep, let's get started with the panel session. So our first question today is actually going to be for you, Emma.
Sure.
So, Emma, it's sometimes suggested that all lawyers are really elitist and they all come from the same backgrounds and have the same life experiences. A lot of people who come from a slightly different background might therefore feel like they don't really fit in the legal profession, or that their background is going to be a barrier to their success before they even get started. Is this something that you personally were ever worried about when you're getting into studying law and starting in the profession? And how has that perception changed as you've gone through your own career?
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Great questions. So answering your first question, was I worried about it when I was thinking about becoming a lawyer? Yes, in all honesty, if I was sitting where you were listening to this call, it did give me worry. I would probably be in the 70% of you who are sitting saying, maybe I'm a bit worried about this. I can tell you now, having been involved in the legal profession for the last 15 years, happily that worry has not been true. I have never felt a situation where my background has been a hindrance or that I don't fit in. If anything, I think that the background and the life experiences that I had have been an asset to me, and that's because I'm able to empathise with a wide variety of people. When I was a solicitor at CMS, and even more so now I practice in the courts as an advocate, you're required to be very good at dealing with people, and a wide variety of people who may come from lots of different backgrounds. So if you have empathy, you approach your job with kindness and integrity, I think that's the most important thing, rather than worrying about your background. And I can say, in all honesty, I am never asked about my background. When you introduced me, that's very correct. I grew up in relatively a challenging part of the world. The west coast of Scotland does experience a great deal of deprivation, and I had some personal circumstances. I lost a parent when I was very young. None of that has held me back or in any way, I hope, hindered the progress of my career. So if you're listening to this call, I hope that is of some reassurance. And by the end of the call, we've brought down that 70% so that you can always have a bit of a worry and a bit of a doubt in your head, but it's not true. And I hope that that will be some comfort to you all listening today.
Thank you so much, Emma. That really is really reassuring, and it's so great to hear. And then another worry that sometimes people might have is that a regional accent or having a different accent from a majority might be a barrier to being successful in the legal profession. Now, Nicola, do you think that's true from your own experience?
Well, this is a funny one because when I was at university, my supervisor said to me that he thought I should have elocution lessons because that would further my legal career more, and I got very, very upset about that and decided that I was going to stuff him and do it anyway. And certainly since I've been in law, it hasn't been a problem at all. I think it actually makes you sound more distinctive and more approachable and helps people remember you. And building client relationships is a really important part of what we do and our job, and anything that you can do to make yourself different to the competition, I think is a really positive thing. And also from a sort of personal perspective, lawyering is all about relationships with people. And if you are more approachable because you've got a gentler accent, or you don't quite sound as, perhaps as stuffy as the next person, it can turn out to be a positive thing for you in your career because it can help you. It goes back to what Emma said really about building empathy, and I think it's a big asset.
Thanks a lot, Nicola. That's really interesting. So I guess more now on the financial side of things. The route to becoming a lawyer can be quite expensive, and it involves years of full-time study. This can lead a lot of people to think that maybe it's only accessible to people who already have money or whose families can afford to support them while they study. Sophia, is that something that you've ever personally experienced problems with? And are there any schemes or initiatives that you've been able to make use of that have helped to ease some of that pressure on you and your family?
Definitely. I think when I was around 16 years old and I was thinking that I want to study law at university, I didn't know how I was going to pay for that. I was on free school meals. My mum was working warehouses for minimum wage, single parent household. We didn't have any savings. We didn't have money. And so I had to figure out a pathway for that. My school didn't give me any information on that. There was no careers advisor as such. And so by luck, I just found out about the CMS scholarship program, which has been incredible. It was a turning point in my life because without it, I wouldn't be able to go to university and study law and then eventually become a lawyer. But when you think about money, it's not just about kind of funding your university degree. Money also comes down to opportunities. So, for example, summer schools are a great way to learn about the subject, to learn about the university that you want to go to. And increasingly, universities are doing these summer schools and they're invaluable. But again, they cost money. So I had to find out about opportunities that wouldn't cost me any money, that are aimed especially for disadvantaged children. And they do exist. They take a bit of research, a bit of initiative, a bit of being proactive, but they are there. So, for example, Sutton Trust, for example, Social Mobility Foundation, they give work experience at chambers, at law firms, and other schemes as well. At university, you have aspiring solicitors that you can get advice on and work experience, again, totally free. And you also have schemes within CMS, so like the scholarship program. You also have CMS Connect, you have Prime, First Steps as well. So, and also not forgetting the solicitor apprenticeships as well. Again, an amazing program that CMS is doing where you'll be working alongside studying, and so your degree will be paid for. So as long as you take that initiative to research, you will find support out there. So definitely don't give up and attend talks like these as well, because you'll find a lot more information about that.
Thank you so much, Sophia. It's so great to hear about how many different things there are that you can do and you can find out about. And it's lovely to hear how much of a difference the CMS scholarship scheme has really been for you. And sort of, you touched on this a little bit, but Emma, some people might not know anyone in the legal profession. And sometimes people might think that you need to know someone in the legal profession to be able to find out about the profession, or even just to become a lawyer, you need to know someone. Emma, do you agree with that?
No, I don't. So again, when I was same age as Sophia, thinking about becoming a lawyer at 15, 16, I didn't know anyone in the legal profession. I hadn't ever met a lawyer. I think the only time I had seen a lawyer is, as Megan says, in film and TV. So what I set out to do was do as much research as I could using the internet. As Sophia said, there is a lot of material available. It may take a bit of time to work through it and work out what's relevant. I treated it almost like a project. So I started up a Word document, and every weekend I would try and spend a bit of time alongside my homework finding out as much as I could about these different schemes and these scholarships. Like Sophia, I was very fortunate that I received a scholarship from the Faculty of Advocates to become an advocate recently. So these schemes are available to you indeed throughout your career and throughout your life, but you do need to do a little bit of research to find out about them. I would recommend treating it like a project. By the time I had finished my research, it was a document several hundred pages long, and I think, gosh, I wish some of my schoolwork had been that dedicated and focused on it. The information is out there. Events like these really, really help, and there's a lot of articles online as well. The other thing I'd recommend to you, some of you may have Twitter. I got a Twitter to start learning a little bit about the legal profession. A lot of firms and chambers have accounts now and share information on how to become a lawyer and advertise events like these. So keep your eyes peeled, do as much research as you can. Knowledge is power. And I don't think, to answer your question, that not knowing someone is a hindrance.
Thanks, Emma. That's really good advice, and also really reassuring to hear that you don't need to have a contact in the profession in order to be able to get into the profession. So when it comes to applying for legal courses at uni, or for jobs in the sector, or even just for work experience, a lot of places' applications kind of require you to already have some work experience, and that can be really frustrating because you can't get the experience without first having the experience, and it all becomes a vicious cycle. So Sophia, you kind of touched on this already in your previous answer, but in your view, how would someone who doesn't know a lawyer go about getting into that sort of legal work experience? And is there other kinds of work experience which might actually be useful in terms of applications and interviews?
So it's definitely important, only because it shows that you are getting yourself into a profession that you know something about. So that's why it's valued on application forms. But when you don't know a lawyer, when, for example, your father or mother is not a lawyer and they can't invite you to their law firm to do a week of work experience, it is very difficult because you don't have that network. You can't ask someone about the profession, what it involves, and whether it is right for you, if this is something that you want. So again, it takes a lot of initiative on your half to find out work experience. And like I've mentioned before, there are programs out there that will provide that work experience. Doesn't matter what your background is, they will pay for your travel and accommodation. So again, a certain trust, I did work experience with my local MP. I also did work experience in one of the top chambers in London, and also at Eversheds as well. That was completely paid for, and it was just invaluable. The same thing as well with Social Mobility Foundation. Again, very similar. They provide mentors from top law firms. I was mentored by a partner in Clifford Chance. Again, I wouldn't be able to find that opportunity if I didn't look at all of these different pathways and different projects that existed. At CMS, like I mentioned, we have CMS Connect, we have CMS First Steps when you're at university in your first year, and also this CMS Academy. That's something that you apply for in your second year. And if university is not something that you consider, or if you are worried about the cost and the debt, because unfortunately, even with scholarships, I still had to get the highest loan available. This is over 60 grand in debt. So it is possible, but if that does worry you, then I think CMS Scholarship is such a wonderful, wonderful program. I know a lot of apprentices at CMS, they're my friends, and they juggle work, they juggle study, but they do really thoroughly enjoy it, and they get a lot of support. One thing to flag as well is that CMS is not looking at kind of minimum requirements for CMS Academy or CMS First Steps. Your application will be viewed holistically, and I definitely encourage everyone to flag on your application forms the fact that the challenges that you faced. For example, if you are on free school meals, to flag that, because it's not something that I used to talk about in my applications. I used to be quite uncomfortable about sharing that. Only recently really that I started talking proudly about my background, because I realized that there are people just like me. When I went to Durham University, I thought that I was the only one from my background to be in this elite university, but that wasn't the case. I found people just like me. When I came to CMS, again, I thought that I was the only person on free school meals and coming from this disadvantaged background, but again, that wasn't the case. And I actually did a project at CMS where I used to meet people and write their stories and then share that with different people at CMS, just to flag and raise awareness that social mobility is not a barrier to success. And so I definitely, again, encourage you to apply. It's all about your passion. It's all about your interest in law, and find out about these programs, because you learn so much and they are available. So definitely don't let that kind of put you off.
Thank you so much, Sophia. And I think it's really, great to hear that there's so much work experience, legal work experience available, but also, experience that you already have might also be relevant. You might have transferable skills from your weekend job. My first job was in a soft play, and the skills from there I use to this day, my prioritising skills. So yeah, there's so many transferable skills as well. So Nicola, the next question is for you, if that's okay. We've sort of touched on this already, but the legal profession is sometimes thought to be really dated or behind the times, and sometimes TV adds to this by portraying lawyers as only really caring about winning at any cost. Nicola, from your experience, is that an accurate representation?
Definitely not. In fact, I would say that law isn't really about winning and losing. There's so much in the middle, which is advisory or contract work, where what we're about is giving our client the best advice we can, or putting them in the best position they can be when they're going into a particular situation, be it a purchase or trying to protect their brand through copyright. It's not at all about this sort of competitive environment where everybody is trying to get one over on each other the whole time. I don't really enjoy confrontation, and would find it very intimidating to have people coming at me all the time. But that isn't part of what I do. What I do is to give the best advice that I possibly can in a collaborative, team-based environment where we all work together to try and get the outcome that the client wants. And it's not at all about having a big tick in the you won or you got the most damages from somebody or something like that. Law's about really analysing someone's situation and trying to mould the legal context to what their needs are and make sure that they're in the best position they can possibly be. And I wouldn't want anybody to be put off because they felt the confrontation would be overwhelming for them, or that there's a need to be ultra competitive the whole time, because that's just not the way that I've experienced it at all.
Thanks, Nicola. That's really useful. In terms of the other side of the sort of profession being seen as old-fashioned, that sort of thing, are there other parts of sort of modern legal working that are useful? Maybe there's flexibility there. What's been your experience with that?
Is that for Nicola, Megan, or for?
That one was for Nicola, just building on her answer there.
My experience of that has been, it's just been great. Certainly not focused on what you see on TV, definitely not stuffy. There's a real emphasis actually on trying to achieve diversity in the legal profession, because people understand that we need to be involving everybody to get the best ideas that we possibly can to be able to represent our clients in the most positive way, and also so that we become a nice place to work, which is an environment that everybody wants to be in and everybody can thrive in. And if there's this sort of stuffy monoculture that's super old-fashioned, that doesn't work at all, because real people in the real world don't behave like that, and that's not who we want to represent or who we are.
That's really helpful. So now we're going to have some more open questions that anyone on the panel could go ahead and answer. So if you would like to answer, just let us know with a little raise of your hand or something. So first of all, so even at sort of these diversity and inclusion type events, a lot of the time there's a focus on a person's being able to achieve in spite of the non-traditional background that they have. But what if we flip the focus of that conversation and looked at people being able to achieve because of the background that they have? We've already touched on this a little bit. I wonder if any of you could think of an example of a time in your career where you felt like coming from that sort of slightly different socioeconomic background was not only not a barrier, but was actually something positive.
I think just to jump in, it's really the qualities.
Sorry, Sophia. What I was going to say is I had an experience where I was working with a local authority lawyer who was on the opposite side to me. And another member of my team had been working with her and had fairly limited success getting her to answer the phone. And I think the reason is that she was a bit scared of him. And I seemed to be more approachable and gave it a try, and I managed to get the agreement that we were doing with that local authority concluded in 2 weeks. And I think that sometimes if you are sort of more from a more affluent background, have been to, you know, a particular school and have a particular accent, that can mean that people might fear you even, and that makes, in some ways, you less effective at your job because of your background rather than more.
Yes, and just to add to that, I think it's also about the qualities. So determination, resilience. Becoming a lawyer is not an easy pathway. There is support out there, but it also can be difficult. I mentor a lot of people that are applying for TCs, that are applying for vacation schemes, and, you know, you do get rejections. I had many rejections before I was accepted for CMS, and so to stay determined and to stay resilient, if this is something that you want to do, I think because of your background, because you had to overcome so many challenges in your life, rejection it's not something that you take and think, oh, okay, I got rejected, that's it, I'm not gonna carry on now, this must be not a career for me, I'm not what they're looking for. But you persevere anyway, you see what you need to improve and you do it. You know that you might be not as polished as other candidates because you didn't have the opportunities growing up, but you know what you need to do. So you attend workshops at university where you need to improve public speaking. You know, you practice and practice and practice, because if you, again, speaking from people that come from the same background as me, it's the same things that come up. It's that lack of confidence, a bit of doubt because of your background. It's maybe, well, I'm not as well spoken as someone else that maybe came from a private school, but it's something that we all can practice on. A few years ago, I had a stammer that I couldn't even get a bus in the morning to go to school, which is really embarrassing for me growing up. I couldn't speak at school when we had to read something on the board. I couldn't do that physically. And so over years, I just started working on my communication skills. I started taking any opportunity to improve that. A few years ago, I thought, oh, because I can't communicate, I can't be a lawyer. That would be it for me. But again, your background really builds those skills. So stay determined, stay resilient. If this is what you want, this is what you like, persevere. Despite what people say, your family may not support you. My friends did not support me, for example. They think, oh, this is not a career for you. But if this is what's in your heart, do it anyway. There is support out there, opportunities out there. Just keep going, really. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I would just simply echo all that Nicola and Sophia have said. I think you have to keep going, you have to be brave. I definitely echo what Sophia said there, that sometimes it's not about thinking of, in terms of where you've come from. I always think it's better to focus on where you're going. Keep looking forward, because you're the master of your own destiny. Like Sophia, I had a lot of challenges around public speaking and communication. You would not believe that, I'm quite sure, given I now talk for a living. But in school, I was so shy that I couldn't stand up and talk at all. And I worked on that, and I made it a skill, and I made it an asset. And now I am paid to talk on people's behalf. So you can turn it around with perseverance, hard work, and a bit of bravery.
Absolutely, that's such great advice from everyone. So we've got one final question before we finish today, and we have again touched on this a little bit, but could anyone on the panel, and maybe everyone on the panel, would like to please give us one piece of advice, maybe in a handful of words or a sentence, for someone, maybe even for your younger self, who might not be sure whether the legal profession is for them? So who would like to take that one first?
I'm happy to go first.
Thank you, Emma.
I've kind of said it already, and I have to say this isn't an original quote.
My advice.
Oh, sorry. Well, Nicola, we'll come to you next. Emma, is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so this is not an original quote from me. I'll put my hands up for that. But a few years ago, I had attended an event just like this, and I saw a speaker there who I'd never heard of before. She was called Dorothy Bain QC. She was a Queen's Counsel, now King's Counsel, and I found it utterly inspiring. And what she said is, it doesn't matter where you come from. All that matters is where you're going, and you just need to keep moving forward and focusing on that. Dorothy Bain is now the Lord Advocate, the Chief Prosecutor and Government Legal Advisor in Scotland. So I hope that's inspiring for you.
That's such a great quote, Emma. Thank you. And Nicola, did you have something to add there?
I was just going to say, be yourself, because what the legal profession really needs is lots and lots of different types of people. And if you try to pretend to be somebody you're not, or to fit what you think you should be like in order to be a lawyer, then actually you're less likely to be successful rather than more. And go in, be yourself, because people want different kinds of people in the job, not just, you know, carbon cutouts of the existing partners or existing senior people or judges.
I love that, Nicola. Be yourself. That's great advice. And Sophia, have you got anything to add?
Yes, I think I would just say definitely look at your background as a positive. Any challenges that you overcame, whether you come from, you know, maybe you don't have sufficient money, or maybe you look after someone, so you're a carer, or any other challenges that you faced, and you think, you know, you might not be up to kind of the standard of somebody who came from a private school or who had a lot of opportunities, because it's all about, again, that passion, that resilience, that determination, and finding opportunities, because they are out there. It just takes a little bit more initiative to build that network of lawyers that you may know, to get a mentor. But that would be my advice. And I feel very, very strongly about that. I think that with passion and determination, you can achieve that. And unfortunately, we don't have kind of sufficient time to go into the details and to spend more time in that. But I actually have made kind of personal videos about scholarships, about my experience, how I got work experience, about my experience at CMS and at university. And it's called Be a Lawyer Project, and it's on YouTube. And so there you can just tune in and just hear about my own experiences of how I came to CMS and how was that journey, and how invaluable and wonderful it has been, about my mentors as well, both at CMS and other law firms. And I think it will be very valuable. But again, there's not enough time to go into detail now, but I just wish you all good luck. And yeah, so.
Thanks everyone for that really positive and really helpful advice. And again, thank you so much to our panelists for coming and giving up their time today. I think one of the things that can often get missed out in this conversation is that visibility piece of really showing the faces of the real people who've come from slightly different backgrounds and been able to achieve, rather than just paying lip service and saying it's possible. So it's really great to have you all here, and thank you very much for your contributions. I'm sure everyone will agree that it was a really useful session. So that's the end of our questions with panelists now. Ella, would you like to take over and just tell us about some upcoming events and lead an audience Q&A now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Megan and Sarah, for leading that, and thank you to the panel for all of your insights. It was really inspiring to hear your stories and your recommendations. So please do remember to pop your questions into the chat. We're going to have a live audience Q&A in just a couple of minutes. So if you've got any burning questions for Nicola, Sophia or Emma, please do pop them in the chat and we will pose them to them in just a minute. So before we do that, I just wanted to ask you the same question that I asked you at the start of today's session. So the poll will be popping up any second now. Do you feel like your background is a barrier to entering the legal services? So 1, 2, maybe 3, it definitely is a barrier, and 4, not sure. Earlier, 70% of you said maybe. So we'll see how you feel now. Whilst you are filling that out, I just wanted to highlight some more upcoming events that we've got in the webinar series. We are now amazingly halfway through the series, but don't worry if you have missed any, then all of the recordings of the sessions so far are available on our website. I'll maybe ask Anita to pop a link to them into the chat so you can all go back and catch up on them. We also have some fantastic sessions coming up over the next few weeks about presence and communicating with impact. We'll be joined by Sharon Welson, who's an executive coach, who's going to talk about some useful tools on how to make your mark, how to communicate, and how to build confidence at all stages of the application process and onto your future careers. Next Friday, we are also excited to be joined by our responsible business and social impact team, who are going to share some of their great work that CMS are currently doing in that particular area. Also, final reminder, please don't forget to log into the CMS VIP portal for more key hints and tips about how to excel in your applications. That is available to you between now and the new year. So in terms of the poll then, earlier 70% said maybe, it's now down to 25%, so that is absolutely brilliant. Really good to see that improvement from the discussion. So thank you so much to everybody for their help. So without further ado then, I'm going to open up to the audience Q&A. We've had a few come in already. Do keep them coming in over the next sort of 10 minutes or so. And I'm going to allocate the questions to each of our audience members. So I'm going to ask about imposter syndrome first, perhaps to Emma. Do you ever encounter imposter syndrome whilst working because of your background?
Great question. So do I encounter imposter syndrome? Yes, every day. I think many people encounter imposter syndrome, not just within the legal profession, but within general life. Do I think it's because of my background? No, I don't. I don't look back at my background and think, oh, that means I shouldn't be here, or I'm not good at my job because of my background. Like Sophia says, it's difficult being a lawyer. It's challenging. It's intellectually difficult, and it can be quite emotionally difficult. You're often dealing with people's problems. They're not going to really come and see a lawyer unless they need to. It's not like going to do something fun generally. So. It can be difficult, and I do have moments sometimes when I think, oh goodness, why am I the advocate arguing this case, or why am I doing this piece of work? I, over time, have dealt with coping strategies to overcome that and realise that voice in my head, the imposter syndrome, isn't real. Many people will be going through that. I think it's far more common in society than we think. And I try, for the most part, not to let me be held back by it.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And I think actually we have a webinar series coming up all about how to deal with imposter syndrome. So if you want to hear any more information about how to deal with imposter syndrome, then do check out our website for some more information. So then, next question I'm going to ask Nicola, which is about the culture of CMS. So how do you find the culture of CMS, and what do you particularly enjoy about it?
I really like the variety of people that you get to meet and how approachable everybody is. I work in all of the offices across the UK, so I feel as though I've got a real sense of what the organisation is like as a whole. I work in the Aberdeen office half the time, and then split the rest of my time between London and one north, so Manchester and Sheffield. And my experience is that everybody just assumes that you're capable and that you are there because you've got there on merit, and accordingly what you say is really well respected and regarded. And also there's a real sort of ability to talk freely about how you feel and what's going on in your life, so that if there is something going on and you need to handle things a little bit differently for a period of time, the organisation is really flexible around that, and they see you as an investment for the long term, as somebody who should be supported to achieve their potential, because there's a sense that unless you're able to achieve your potential as an individual, then you're not going to be able to contribute effectively to your team or to the wider firm. So yeah, that's my view on that.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great sort of summary of life here at CMS. Absolutely. Okay, we've got a brilliant question from Tasman, who's come in from the chat. Sophia, I'm going to pose this one to you. What does being your authentic self look like in a corporate environment?
That's a really good question. It's something that I have thought about since coming to CMS as well, or just even at university as well, because sometimes there is that perception of, the perfect lawyer, or where the perfect lawyer comes from. And we touched on those points earlier today, somebody from a privileged background or whose parents are lawyers perhaps. And so you have this myth in your head that you may want to reach, or like Nicola has mentioned as well before, maybe your accent, and you think, oh, it needs to be a London accent because London is the hub and everybody should speak the same. But I think once you accept yourself and you realize that everything about you is good, it's something that is your selling point, not something that you actually need to hide or not talk about it. If you feel proud of your background, if you feel proud of your journey, if you feel proud of who you are and your family, then you will feel comfortable in your shoes in whatever environment you are. And then once you realize that there are people just like you as well, in all aspects of society, like I mentioned, even in the most elite universities where you think everybody's so different from you, no, there's still people just like you. And this includes the legal profession. There's a real push now for diversity and inclusion, not just in a kind of statistical sense, but actually genuine desire to make it a place where everybody feels comfortable about talking in their background, where we have different webinars and meetings where we discuss things like social mobility and how we can improve that, and how can we be better and be a great place for everybody to feel great coming to work. And in my experience, I really felt that it's an inclusive environment. I've been very happy here. It's something my background has always been kind of celebrated, and it's a good thing. So I think in order to be authentic, you have to accept who you are, accept your background, see the challenges that you faced as something that is great about you. That's something that in your application forms you can talk about and celebrate. I think that's the starting point, really, because it is a very diverse place to work in. So I think that's the starting point, really, to embrace yourself, embrace your journey, and see your background as a positive, because it is.
Absolutely. I love that advice. And when we talk to individuals about sort of, applications and video interviews and all those assessment days as well, our top bit of advice is to always be the best version of you. And the reason we say that is because we really do value diversity of experience, diversity of thought. And like Sophia touched on earlier, we do look at applications holistically. So we want to get to know you more as an individual. We don't have any robots or AI looking through our applications. We have one person who screens every single application to our early talent programs here at CMS, and what they are particularly looking for is that individual piece of thought and background and experience. So it really is about shouting about your achievements or your background or what you've done to make you stand out from the crowd. So yeah, love that advice. Thank you so much, Sophia. Next question then. I want to ask Nicola, who has inspired you most during your career so far?
Oh, that's a really, really tricky one. It's funny, actually, this person's still at CMS, but they were my VAC scheme supervisors. So I did the equivalent of what the CMS Academy is quite a few years ago now. And there was a lady there who's now a partner at CMS, who was from the same part of the UK that I was from. And I remember having a little bit of a wobble in her room during my 2 weeks vacation scheme, saying, oh, I'm not sure that I'm cut out for this. I've never been to London before. I've never got the tube anymore. I'm a bit scared by getting the tube and getting around. I'm worried I'm going to be robbed on my way home from work. And I was spilling all this stuff out to her when I was in her office, and she said, Nicola, you're going to be fine. Think about all the people who managed to get by in London and managed to have careers in offices in London. It's just that it's not within your sphere of experience. And, you've broke so many barriers already by getting here and getting a place on the vacation scheme here. You are supposed to be here. And you shouldn't talk yourself out of something that you're very able and capable of doing. So ever since then, I've sort of hero worshipped this particular lady. Her name's Caroline, and she has continued to support me throughout my entire career at CMS. And I still occasionally meet her for coffee now when that old imposter syndrome kicks in, and I say, oh, I'm not sure I can do this. And she's like, no, you really can. Stop being daft. So yeah, it's a senior lady lawyer from the same part of the country as me who works at CMS.
I love that, and I hope you'll tell her as well what an inspiration she's been. I'm sure she knows, but lovely to get that feedback. That's wonderful. Emma, you mentioned somebody earlier about the quote who inspired you. Anyone a bit closer to home, perhaps, who's inspired you?
Yeah, so I think role models are actually hugely important. So what I do, this is quite embarrassing. I keep a list of role models. I have it in like the notes app on my phone, and I add to it with too much frequency probably. But I've got that list. I've had that list for about a decade, and I add to it. And there's so many. I couldn't pick one because, to be honest, in the legal profession, I meet people who inspire me in different ways and unexpected ways all the time. There are lots of people who are inspiring for different reasons, and I've been keeping a note of them. Whenever I have a bit of doubt, I'll run through that list and think, yeah, they can do it. Probably a bit closer to home, this is really cheesy, but probably my mum. I think if you've got people that you're close to in your personal life, and you can nurture those relationships and just keep yourself grounded, that makes a huge difference as well. So yeah, closer to home would definitely be my mum.
Brilliant, thank you. And Sophia, anything to add to that one? Who's inspired you most in your career?
Very good question as well. I think for me as a starting point was really, because for me growing up, inspiration was any lawyer that I could meet and see. I think the turning point for me was when somebody actually believed in me, because again, being 16 years old, not having kind of the finances to go to university, or not having the network of lawyers, or not even having that knowledge that you kind of suck in as like a sponge when you grow up in a family of lawyers, for example, or professionals even. I didn't have that. And so why CMS scholarship, for example, was so important. It wasn't just about the money, but about the faith that somebody has put in me, that they saw potential in me. And I think that's why it's so important to find yourself mentors. Again, they're not only a great source of knowledge that you'll need to kind of accumulate when you start applying for universities and then your vacation schemes, TC applications, but they're also there to be that support that you need to kind of cheer you on and say you can do it, because maybe they have done the same journey years back and they're in a position where they can say, I've made it, therefore you can. So I think it's so important to find yourself mentors, whether it's through again schemes that CMS gives, or kind of external programs as well, where you have somebody that you can ask questions to, you can be quite open and vulnerable with them and say, I don't know this right, or how can I, what do I need to do, what I need to improve, what skills do I need to learn. For me, that was, as a practical thing, very important, because you can have wonderful people that inspire you, but if you don't know their journey, if you don't know what they have done to get there, then I don't know if that's helpful necessarily, because you might kind of put them on a pedestal and think, they're great, but I'll never achieve that. But then once you learn about their story, you think, they've actually struggled here, or they did this, and I actually had to do that, and they came from this background. I actually, when I was young as well, 16, I used to look at people's LinkedIn profiles and see what kind of things they have done, because they're already there in a position where I wanted to be, say, 5 or 6 years on. And I was thinking, okay, so what kind of things did they do at university? What kind of things were they involved in? What kind of committees they were on? What did they do to basically, again, develop those skills? Or what experiences do I need to have, for example, to get there? And so it's really for you to find people that inspire you, that are kind of years ahead, but also to find practically what you need to do to get there. Because like I mentioned, it's putting the work in, but you do need that inspiration for sure to look forward to. And that somebody has to be from it's helpful if they had similar challenges or similar background as well, because then you can see yourself in them, if that makes sense. So for me, that was really helpful.
I really, really love that advice, using sort of LinkedIn to have a look at people who are maybe 10 years in front of you in their careers, to see how they got there, and reach out to them as well. You know, the worst thing that will happen on LinkedIn is that somebody will ignore you, but you know, you might get a chance to chat to somebody, to ask them questions, and to hear more about their journey as well. And I'm sure, Sophia, that people will start looking at you as an inspiration to see how you got to where you are today. So I love that advice. Okay, we've got time for just one more question then. We've touched on it slightly already, but I just wanted to ask the panel how students can find out more about this topic, or maybe some resources that they can use to sort of develop their understanding a bit more. Has anyone got any hints and tips for further resources? Nicola, yes.
So one of the things that I found difficult when I was trying to make a decision about whether to become a lawyer is to find out what good looks like. So what is a good university to study law? What do I need to be able to do from an academic perspective to get in? Which firms are the better law firms? So that information is usually available through directories. You can find information online which ranks different universities for different subjects and tells you where is good, and also that tells you what their entry requirements are. And then with the law firms again, you can have a look on things like Chambers and the Legal 500 to see how the law firms are ranked for different subjects that you might be interested in practicing. For example, I don't know, you might be interested in doing civil litigation, or you might be interested in doing corporate law. And from that, you can find out what those companies are like that are the best at that, and also find out what their entry requirements, and probably a little bit of information about their culture too and how their clients see them. So I find sort of centralized lists that have a critical account of different institutions as a really helpful resource for me in knowing where to direct my energy in terms of what to apply to, where my skill set would fit best, where my personality would fit best. I think all of those things are really important when making a decision, and finding that information isn't the most obvious if you've got no experience of the legal profession in your family before.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will really help with your research to understand whether the firm that you're applying for, or the university you're applying for, is right for you as well. You know, there's always a lot of pressure on candidates to showcase themselves to a firm, but actually you've got to use these opportunities to find out more about whether the firm or the university or the company is the right fit for you as well, because, you know, hopefully you'll be spending quite a few years there. So doing that sort of more detailed research can really help in the long term. Emma, Sophia, do you have anything to add about that final question? Any final resources?
Do you want to add anything, Sophia? I have one thing to add. I can go after you if you'd like to.
Go for it, Emma.
Yeah, Emma, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, I should have brought it out at the start, but I have brought a prop with me, which is the wig, just in case anyone's wondering about becoming an advocate. So I got my wig earlier this summer, and it's very, very special. We spoke about how sometimes the legal profession can be seen as old-fashioned. Is this old-fashioned? Maybe, but it's also great. I think it's one of our trademarks, and it's a brand that when you see the wig, you know exactly what that person's there to do. They're there to stand up and represent someone in court. I would say if you have an interest in that aspect of the profession, so being a barrister in England and Wales or an advocate up here in Scotland, there are fantastic website resources. Bar Council for England and Wales, Faculty of Advocates in Scotland. Do have a look at it, yeah, would commend it to you. I'd also just echo, if you ever have any questions, as Ella and Sophia have said, feel free to message someone. What's the worst that can happen? They don't reply, you know, so what? 9 times out of 10, in my experience, they will reply and they'll be really helpful, and it's another person in the world you've met. So don't be shy. If you ever have any questions, please do get in touch.
Absolutely. Over to you, Sophia. Any last words?
Yes, I think just to add to what Emma said, just be proactive, build your network, say yes to, you know, different opportunities that come up. Being here on this webinar, for example, is really great that you're already doing that. Just to to build that knowledge, to build that exposure, that experience, because you really need to show when it comes to the time when you do apply to a law firm that you have thought about this, you have met people, you have talked to them, and this is what you want to do. It's a conscious decision, and it's so important just to take that initiative and be proactive, whether it's before university or during university, and just meet people. It's so important when you don't have that network to just keep building it, keep meeting people. And again, like Emma said, don't worry if your message on LinkedIn gets ignored. Somebody else will reply. So just keep going, and yes, be proactive and keep coming to these webinars as well, because they're really helpful.
Brilliant, thank you. So thank you so much, everybody. That is the end of today's session. So a huge thank you to our panelists, to Megan and to Sarah for leading the conversations earlier. A huge thank you to Anita, who's been answering all of your questions on the chat. And a thank you to the Meet and Engage team for making it all run smoothly in the background. But a huge thank you to you guys for joining us, giving up time on your Friday afternoon, dialing in from all over the world to come and talk to us today. We have really enjoyed it. Remember, we have got lots more webinars coming up, and you can also catch up on our past events online. So thanks so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.